Is this where you thought you'd be when you launched the Uncommitted Movement?
I don't think that we would be in this moment where it was going to be so close.
Senator Rubio, will you call for ceasefire?
No, I will not.
Gaza?
On the contrary.
The message right now is to President Biden, you've got to do something about this, President Biden.
Hi, my name is Reese Waters and I'm troubled. Shout out to all of our new subscribers and members here on the channel, especially those that have been emailing me at reese@reesewaters.com and keeping me abreast of the many reactions to the election. Now, a great number of you have filled up my inbox showcasing all of the marches that have been happening all across the country, to which I always applaud people exercising their right to protest and voice their opinions. It is the marches from those who were challenging and stood opposed to Kamala Harris's candidacy that strike me as particularly fascinating. Is this not what y'all wanted? Is this not what y'all wanted? Because it was so much that you had to say before Election Day, and now you take to the streets, apparently in opposition to an incoming Trump presidency, which is odd, because if you want to showcase your voice and use force in numbers in order to do so, prior to the election will be the optimal time for effect. I don't know why you do this immediately after the election. But then there was this little ditty that a number of you guys sent me as well.
The message right now is to President Biden, you've got to do something about this, President Biden.
Oh, we'll have to circle back around to that. Let's start at the beginning, the reactions immediately after Election Day from the so-called uncommitted.
Layla, you obviously were one of the co-founders of the Uncommitted Movement, which began in Michigan, picked up hundreds of thousands of votes in the primaries across the country, turned up at the DNC only to be blocked by the party apparatus, by the Harris campaign, didn't have a speaker on stage, ended up not endorsing Harris, but not endorsing a third-party candidate. What do you make of tonight's election in Michigan? Is this where you thought you'd be when you launched the Uncommitted Movement?
I don't think that we would be in this moment where it was going to be so close.
How? Huh? How? Because if there's one consistent thing about the entire lead up to this election, it would be how close things appeared to be. People calling it the closest election, the toughest one to call in American history. Both sides talked about how close this election was. So I'm trying to figure out how you didn't think it would be this close. And maybe the more important question is, why would that be relevant? Are you saying that if it wasn't this close, you would feel more comfortable with how you've moved up to this point, but now you're concerned because it's so close? Because you didn't think that your behavior would actually have any ramifications, so you felt free to just say and do whatever, but now you're finding out. Is that what I'm hearing?
And I really have to say that being in my community, I went out and voted this morning. I've been talking to voters. I've been talking to my community members. Overwhelmingly, today has been a very painful day for our anti-war movement, and especially for Arab Americans and Muslim Americans and young people who right now are feeling left out from their own party. And I just keep thinking that it did not have to be this close.
Yeah.
And I really, I'm really frustrated. I'm feeling very emotional right now. I'm sad and I'm feeling betrayed. And
oh, betrayed is that's a good word to use. That is a good word to use for how a lot of us are feeling right about now. Now, let me first say that I empathize with your position as somebody who stands generally opposed to a great number of U.S. foreign policy decisions, not the least of which is our hands in the situation in Gaza. I generally stand with you on that issue. Where you lose me is where you decide to hold the sitting vice president, not the president, the sitting vice president accountable for decades of U.S. foreign policy decisions that has left us in our current situation as it relates to Israel and Gaza. That is where you lose me, because if there's one thing that we know, it's that America has been deeply problematic for a long time. Just look back at how many coups we have a hand in. So to all of a sudden decide that Kamala Harris is the one who needs to stand in opposition to the decades-long history that we have established as vice president, when we know that the money, specifically relating to this issue, the special interest money, let's talk about AIPAC, the special interest money is flowing deeply into the pockets of politicians on both sides of the aisle, to the point where we saw Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman be primaried just in this cycle.
Pulling me away from my position as Congresswoman. All you did was take some of the strings off. But all they did was radicalize me, and so now they be afraid. I don't think that there is nothing that happens in my life that happens in vain. So if this happened, it's because it was meant to happen. And let me say, it's because of the work that I need to do.
We are going to show fucking AIPAC the power of the motherfucking South Bronx. People ask me why I got a foul mouth. What am I supposed to do? You coming after me. You coming after my family. You coming after my children. I'm not supposed to fight back. I'm not supposed to fight back. We're going to show them who the f we are.
That is how deeply the special interest money is flowing, specifically with regards to Israel and Gaza. But certainly we know it's flowing with regards to a great number of other issues connected to us, the U.S. and foreign policy. And you could maybe hold the Democratic establishment accountable for that. You could maybe hold the Democratic establishment responsible for what happened to Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. But you show me the Republican congressman, senator, governor, mayor, president. You show me the Republican that has stood up for Palestinian rights. Go ahead, I'll wait. So it sounds a little disingenuous for you to all of a sudden be looking at the Democrats and holding not only them accountable, but specifically Kamala Harris and her campaign accountable for where we currently sit as a country, but especially when it is in opposition to a man that had somebody get up at MSG and talk about crushing jihad.
We must elect Donald J. Trump president because we must crush jihad.
Yeah, that happened. We got all this to say about Kamala Harris to the point where we're going to let that guy bring his people into the White House. Yeah, betrayed is that's the right word. That is the right word.
You know, there was a clear pathway for Vice President Harris to win overwhelmingly in a state like Michigan by turning a page away from Biden's disastrous Gaza policy. And,
Yes.
you know, I think this unwillingness to shift on a more humanitarian policy may have, you know, very real consequences. And I think we're going to see that here in Michigan.
Oh, you're going to see very real consequences. You definitely are going to see very real consequences. And those will probably happen immediately, considering he just installed Mike Huckabee as our envoy in Israel. This Mike Huckabee.
There's really no such thing as a Palestinian. There's not. Arabs and Persians. You don't. You know, and there's such complexity within that. There's really no such thing. That's been a political tool to try to force land away from Israel.
As far as there being a very real pathway for her here in Michigan, so let me get this straight. She was supposed to, in the face of what she's seen happen with congressmen in various parts of the country, right? She was supposed to stand up in opposition to the existing policy, leave Biden twisting in the wind, upset his people, give gas to the accusations of anti-Semitism that were actively coming from the right and still are coming from the right. So she's supposed to give gas to those accusations of anti-Semitism and inflame AIPAC to spend even more money to squash her campaign. That was her pathway. Not trusting you to see the very real reality of what a Trump presidency means for your cause and making a decision in your own best interest. You know what? Let's hear from the co-founder of the Uncommitted Movement, also on Election Day.
Now is Abbas Alawieh, co-founder, I should say, of the Uncommitted Movement. He was also a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. And you've made a decision, a big decision. You've decided personally to vote for Kamala Harris.
You did all this. You said all this. You created all these issues. You drove all these media narratives for you to turn around and vote for Kamala Harris. What changed? I need to try and understand what changed that caused you to decide to vote for Kamala Harris, because it doesn't look to me like any of the actual facts have changed. So whatever information you processed that led you to Kamala Harris being the better of the choices for you would have been the case in the beginning. But you made all this noise and created all these fires, created all this doubt in people's minds, got all these people uncommitted. Like, Uncommitted is the name of the movement, Uncommitted. For you to turn around and commit.
How did you come to that decision?
Thank you so much for having me on, Andrea. This is a moment of deep pain and honestly frustration, where members of the Arab American, Muslim American community for months have been oscillating between dealing with our grief, dealing with the fact that so many of our family members are there living under the bombs that our U.S. government is sending Benjamin Netanyahu, while also trying to do the politically savvy thing. For me personally, my decision, I see it as it's going to be Trump or Harris in the White House, and it's Harris voters, it's young voters, it's Black voters, anti-war voters all across our country who are going to be the coalition that hopefully pressures the next administration to break from the policy of sending unconditional weapons and funding to the Israeli military. And so that is where I'm making my personal decision.
Now, I very much appreciated what he just said about what he has in front of him and what his group have in front of them and what we have as Americans have in front of us, because all the things I just laid out that are so deeply problematic about American foreign policy and the reason why we can't get substantive change, even when there's significant movement on the ground, significant sway and influence on the ground for there to be significant change to American foreign policy. All of these things need to be deconstructed, right? All of the super PAC money and all of this, the influence and all that needs to be deconstructed. And you have to look at who gives you the better opportunity to actually create some kind of substantive change. Which of these two groups would be more willing to listen to you? And you landed correctly, but that was the case in August, that was the case in July, that was the case in May, that was the case in January, that was the case in 2023. That's always been the case. So I don't. How did we end up in this place where Kamala Harris is trying to walk a tightrope between uncommitted voters and accusations of being complicit in genocide from her own left flank and allegations of anti-Semitism from the far right? She had to walk through that to and through Election Day, but you're giving me all of the logic that should have squashed that a long time ago.
Even though the Uncommitted National Movement had made an offer to Vice President Harris to endorse, and ultimately Vice President Harris did not want that endorsement. And so we're, being clear and trying to promote good information about what Donald Trump has planned for criminalizing our anti-war movement and the need to oppose him. But ultimately, the Uncommitted National Movement did not endorse Vice President Harris.
Okay, so if I'm hearing him correctly, apparently the Uncommitted National Movement made an offer to endorse Vice President Harris. Now, it doesn't make any logical sense for them to refuse an endorsement, considering that was one of their biggest concerns going into an election that was perceived to be one of the closest and toughest to call in American history. It doesn't make any logical sense that they would refuse that endorsement unless that endorsement came with some asks or some demands. So what's the rest of it?
Ultimately, Vice President Harris did not want that endorsement. And so we're, being clear and trying to promote good information about what Donald Trump has planned for criminalizing our anti-war movement and the need to oppose him. But ultimately, the Uncommitted National Movement did not endorse Vice President Harris.
Also of note here, because the point that he made about Donald Trump's plans to criminalize the anti-war movement, yes, that is exactly correct. And where we all need to be paying attention is it's not just specifically the anti-war movement that he's seeking to criminalize. If you look at the kinds of things that he was saying on the campaign trail, he's talking about radical left lunatics. He just set up a tent where he could just fold any issue that he decides is a radical left issue, label them lunatics, and he intimated about trying to use the military to squash that kind of dissent. That is the kind of thing we all need to be paying attention to, and it's certainly kind of the kind of thing that y'all should have been paying attention to. Now where we at?
It looks like ethnic cleansing. It sounds like ethnic cleansing. It's an ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and the West Bank and southern Lebanon. And Mike Huckabee was just named as the guy who's going to oversee the final stages of that campaign.
That's right. This Mike Huckabee.
There's really no such thing as a Palestinian. There's not. Arabs and Persians. You don't. And there's such complexity within that. There's really no such thing. That's been a political tool to try to force land away from Israel.
So our message right now is to President Biden, you've got to do something about this. President Biden, stand up for once to Netanyahu before Donald Trump successfully gets away with pinning this legacy of this ethnic cleansing campaign on you and you alone forevermore.
So let me see if I got this straight. So Joe Biden, the guy who you demonized in your approach to Kamala Harris when you were asking her to stand in opposition, like, you know, that whole Genocide Joe, all that whole thing that was being thrown out. So Joe Biden, the guy who's been demonized by this entire thing, is who you are now pleading to do something. Well, you actually didn't need Joe Biden to do something. You could have done something by virtue of keeping Joe Biden and his crew, Kamala Harris, in power. Like that was the thing to do. Let's also highlight the fact that you just kind of slid in.
Stand up for once to Netanyahu before Donald Trump successfully gets away with pinning this legacy of this ethnic cleansing campaign on you and you alone.
I didn't realize that we were so complicit in allowing them to shift blame over the Democrats for stuff that they do. I understand that MAGA has made a habit of going across all of our airwaves and pretending like anything good that's happened in the last decade is attributed to Trump and everything bad is Biden's fault. I understand that they completely ignore the reality of a 4-year presidency for the two of them and things that happen in those respective windows of time. I get that they do that. I didn't know that we were doing that. I didn't know that we were doing that. That is really fascinating. It is the kind of double standard that me as a black man found so objectionable and, dare I say, infuriating when I look at what Kamala Harris was held responsible for, the legacy of American foreign policy that Kamala Harris was held responsible for, and all of this rhetoric leading up to the election. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was free to just lob their anti-Semitic grenades and appear in synagogues and pretend as if his base had loved Jewish people all the time.
The Jewish people would have a lot to do with the loss.
And give little to no cookies, biscuits, or any other trinkets to your community and get off scot-free. It's that kind of double standard that me as a black man cannot abide. We even saw what it was, at least as far as their playbook was concerned, from Led by Donkeys.
October 18th, it's revealed that another Musk-funded group called Future Coalition PAC is targeting Muslim voters in Michigan and Jewish voters in Pennsylvania with diametrically opposed political advertisements about Kamala Harris. In areas with large Muslim populations, the group is painting Harris as a close friend of Israel and is suggesting that she's beholden to the beliefs of her Jewish husband. But in areas with large Jewish populations, the ads say Harris panders to Palestine.
But to let the mayor of Dearborn tell it, or the Muslims for Trump, apparently they proved a point.
Hey, where's all my Gaza people at? Where's all my Palestinian genocide folks at? Where's all the voters who said they couldn't vote for Joe Biden because he's not going to do anything to help the people of Gaza? Where y'all at? Because I got a question. Trump just nominated Marco Rubio to serve as Secretary of State. Now let me show a video that he wanted you to see.
Rubio, will you call for
No, I will not. On the contrary.
No?
Are you filming it?
Wait.
I
Yeah,
want
we're
you guys
filming.
to get this. I want them to destroy every element of Hamas they can get their hands on. These people are vicious animals who did horrifying crimes. And I hope you guys post that.
And
that's
what
my
about the
position.
civilians
I
that are
blame
being
Hamas.
killed every day?
Hamas should stop hiding behind civilians, putting civilians in the way. Hamas knew that this was going to lead to this. Hamas should stop building their military installations underneath hospitals.
So you don't care that 15,000 have died? You don't care about the babies that are being killed every day?
I think it's horrifying. I think it's terrible, and I think Hamas is 100% to blame. That's what I think. Make sure you post that, please.
So, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but that doesn't sound like that man intends to do anything to help the Palestinian people in Gaza. Like, nothing. So how y'all feeling about your vote today? How you guys feeling that sat on the couch and didn't vote? How you all feeling today? Because I told you.
And I, for one, want to be the first to wish you the best of luck negotiating with a Donald Trump who no longer needs your vote, and Mike Huckabee. Thank you guys so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. Like a lot of you, I'm moving forward one day at a time. A little unsure of exactly what our world will look like. And as far as I'm concerned, that means the media landscape at large, but specifically here on YouTube. And one thing that I did want to do was try and ensure that I could connect with you guys regardless of our evolving world. And two ways of doing that. One is my mailing list. And I send out a newsletter every so often, and you can sign up for my newsletter and get added to the mailing list by sending me an email at reese@reesewaters.com, or you can just sign up at my website, reesewaters.com. The second way is memberships. We launched memberships and it's gone extremely well. I'm trying to drop more and more membership content every single week. And you can find the link for membership in the description to all of my videos, including this one. And that gives me the ability to put out content and connect with you guys completely independent of the algorithm and who's in charge and who's deciding what topic and issue to favor and what to suppress. And so that is something that I think will become significantly more impactful as we move forward into a second Trump presidency. So I got the newsletter and the mailing list. You can sign up on my website, and I also have membership. The link is in the description to this and every video. Again, thanks so much for being a part of this channel. We're gonna ride it till the wheels fall off.